All right, miners, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power mining analysis. This episode is called The Perfect Storm, and it really feels like that's exactly where we are in terms of the Bitcoin cycle. We have new all-time highs being broken on a consistent basis. The miners are off to the absolute races, not only on the backs of Bitcoin strength, but also on this HPC AI re-rate. And we've got a steady news flow, both on a macro and company-specific level. We're going to be talking about all of that in today's presentation. Before we get into it, take a second, smash the like button. Anthony loves it. It's a big help to the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below which of the miners you're most bullish on now and why. With that being said, let's get into today's podcast. Good morning, konnichiwa, Anthony. We are now broadcasting in 11 languages on the Power Mining Analysis channel. You guys, just in time for the Bitcoin bull run we are now in the midst of. Bitcoin itself trading above $125,000. I did a poll last night asking you guys how you're feeling about market open. It appears most people hit the nail on the head. Anthony, Bitcoin surpassed a new all-time high today. It has pulled back a bit, currently in the 125.5 range.
Yeah, hey Bryce, thank you for the Japanese introduction there. We have received a lot of requests for additional languages, and we can tell you now that, as you say, there's about 11 languages already on the system there. We want to try and maybe expand that to include other countries that feel they're being left out. My wife is from Kazakhstan, and I'm sure she'd like to maybe either have Kazakh or Russian as a language included as well, because there may be a lot of more people out there who are interested in these stocks all around the world. Remember, we have the geographical pull for all our podcasts, and it does go worldwide. And so it's not just a North America or a UK based. In fact, there's a significant amount outside of those two areas all around the world. So it's great that we have the ability to get this translated into a number of other languages. If you are tuning in from one of those countries there where it's non-English is the first language, we welcome you to the channel.
Yeah, and make sure you guys let us know in the comment section below where you are tuning in from. We always like to see subscribers from far and wide. Now, in terms of Bitcoin, this is a global trend as well here. We've seen very strong trading over the weekend. We just mentioned a new all-time high earlier today. What do you make of Bitcoin this week, Anthony? I know you had predicted an all-time high by Monday. It appears that that has come true here.
Yeah, I think it was definitely on the cards, and we saw Bitcoin high last week, and we're seeing an all-time high today as well. It's just a fraction under 126,000. Let's see if we can sort of maintain that momentum and go and push through that and give some real new highs rather than just effectively touching the high and then coming back down. And I've seen a lot of posts on social media suggesting that even this time in the cycle was still significantly lower. The Bitcoin price, if you compare it to previous cycles, and they do seem to run in unison, that this cycle is not really pushing to the levels that some of the analysts are expecting to. And that's hard to believe, because when you look at the incessant buying of public companies and ETFs and how much Bitcoin has been produced, it's just absolutely staggering. And we'll come on to that a little bit later in the podcast. But I'm pleased to see the Bitcoin price well above 125,000 today. That nice 5-day graph there showing an increase of nearly $7,000, representing just under 6%. Remember, how long did it take in the early part of Bitcoin to get anywhere near $1,000? And we're doing this now, literally on a daily basis. So very, very positive. Another thing I'd like to mention is, I talk to people all the time, and I know you do, Bryce, about the price of Bitcoin. And the first thing a lot of people say is, yeah, I wish I'd bought it when it was like $1,000. I didn't buy it when it was $1,000. I did buy it, not that much higher than that compared to today's price. But I feel my response to them is, if you think about the Bitcoin price now, and think about the Bitcoin price potentially in, say, 3 to 5 years' time, we're still very early at the moment. So a great day for Bitcoin today. And if we zoom out to the 6 month, we can see that those people that bought 6 months ago are sitting on a nice 50% increase in the value there. And zoom out even further to the last year, and you could have bought Bitcoin at literally half the price it is today. So as I say, people say to me, I'm too late. You're never too late. You're probably still very, very early, and this has got a long way to go. And I would suggest, while we've got the current, administration in the Oval Office, this next 3 years is going to be pretty, pretty special.
Yeah, it seems to just be one strength after another right now. You mentioned the rate of speed Bitcoin is increasing. I saw a tweet last week. Bitcoin jumped from around 108 to 124, so a $16,000 move. It took the cryptocurrency 9 years to get to $16,000 the first time, from 0 to 16. So definitely building momentum. And that's really the essence of this video, the miner's perfect storm, talking about this culmination of all these macro factors, whether it be the Bitcoin price, the interest rates, the HPC AI phenomenon we're seeing. It's all coming together at the right time. So the first pillar here, as you just rightfully said, Bitcoin price setting new all-time highs. If we transition over to the miners now, you can see this is having a major impact on the Bitcoin mining stocks today. We're going to talk about some of the HPC AI news that broke this morning as well, but the Bitcoin price itself really strengthening the revenues, the amount of money that these companies are generating to pump into the HPC expansion.
Yeah, and great to see Hive Digital, top of the list today in terms of best performing miners, up 23% at the time of the podcast. Volume 46 million as opposed to an average daily volume of about just under 30 million. So very, very much so there. I want to highlight actually, if you go across the 52-week range, this just tells you when the share price reached its highs. You can see there that nearly 9 or even close to 10 miners have achieved their 52-week high in either today or in the last few days. So pretty much we're in momentum at the moment in the mining space there. Bitfarms having another good day. I mean, I feel when I look at the miners that haven't moved as much as maybe an IREN or Cipher, I think Bitfarms tends to be the one I think about. I think about Panther Creek. I think about Washington. I think about the fact that I think at the moment they're being valued pretty much majority on their Bitcoin mining. I don't think there's too much a premium put into there for HPC. I think once they have an announcement, if it's anything like the announcement Cipher released there, then the expectation is it'll go the same way. And if we look at the Cipher market capitalization, $6.2 billion. They've announced one deal. And so I think Bitfarms is one of those, when you listen to Ben on the podcast, and I know you've been listening to it because it's one of our best performing podcasts of the last sort of 3 months. And interestingly, when we do a podcast, it's like usually that first week that we get most of the people listening in. I can tell you now that in the first 27 days of the podcast, we've achieved the same number of views or listen to that podcast in the next 27 days as well. So that shows you how well Ben Gagnon's thought of. So if you haven't managed to listen to that podcast, please go and have a listen to it. There's a lot of information in there, a lot of information what they're doing in Panther Creek and in Washington with regards to HPC. Another good mover. DMG, we talked about them last week, having a great move there. Look at that market cap now. I think that's in Canadian dollars, but it's 111 million. Bear in mind, this was a $30 million company not too long ago. So again, massive increases there. IREN, well, we mention IREN pretty much every day, and we have to sort of like check ourselves because there are other miners out there. IREN is not the only miner out there, and we know that the majority of you guys, they love IREN. Another 12-13% increase today. I've seen Mike Alfred tweeting probably every 30 seconds as it broke a new market cap record. Today, IREN is valued at $15.5 billion, which puts it in Australia terms probably about number 16th as the biggest company in Australia. I was looking down the list today and having a look at them, and they've got some big companies, but IREN will probably be in the top 20 of all the most valuable companies in Australia. Put it into perspective, IREN is now valued today at the same valuation of Marathon Holdings and also Riot Platforms together, and that is something I never expected 3 or 4 years ago when I came into this space, because those were the two stalwarts. Those are the ones that managed to get that March and everybody else using the Nasdaq as the first two listed miners on there. All that money came through, but this last 12 months has been a real eye-opener. Now we're seeing other miners come through. Cipher's also catching up the likes of Mara today. And you can see down the list of market caps there, we have about probably 4 or 5 miners over 5 billion that haven't even been mentioned on today's podcast. So it's getting really, really market capital intensive out there. But IREN, to be honest with you, where does this stop, Bryce?
It's just incredible. I also wanted to shout out to Riot and Bitdeer, both getting back in the 20s today. I actually have a clip from Ben Gagnon at the HC Wainwright conference talking about this late mover advantage almost in the HPC space. We can play that in a second when we get into the HPC part, but Scrubgrass, another great site that they're really focused on in that PJM market. Now, if we transition over to your heat map, we obviously like to see the big moves on the daily, but you and I stress the importance. Zoom out, you guys. Look at multiple durations, multiple different metrics. We've actually added a 1 year on here as well, and pretty much green across the board. I think I was counting 7 or 8 companies now in triple-digit returns, and I got to give ourselves a pat on the back here. It's pretty incredible to pick a portfolio like this 2 years ago and have each and every one of these companies, number one, still listed and trading, but number two, seeing this type of growth.
It is fairly phenomenal, and some of those returns. Even if you take the shorter period, if you just go to a month, I'm going to say the average return for the last month is close to 100% across the board there. It's nothing less than phenomenal. I mean, Soluna might be down today and down on the 5 day, but if you look at the 1 month change there, 273%, and we'll talk a bit more about Soluna in a second. They've got a news update out there. DMG up 113, Hive up 112, Bitfarms 168. Sort of stealing the show there. IREN 118%, but IREN have been strong through every period. If you look at the 1 year change, 584%. We talked about the fact that actually, if you'd have bought the shares just in April this year, when they were hovering around the $5.50 mark, you'd be sitting on a 10x today in literally, 4 to 5 months, a 10x in 4 to 5 months from one of these companies. That's the volatility, that's the potential. But equally, we stressed before, any signs of the market seeing the other way, and these stocks can go down equally as quick there. So just be careful out there, guys. It doesn't hurt to take some profits off the table. I know we've been doing that, and we talk about that on our Friday members only podcast that we do. So if you haven't tuned into that one there, have a look at that podcast there. We had a good session on Friday, went through all our trades, went through our portfolios, and we'll do that on a regular basis when we make trades and there's a change in the portfolio itself. But I mean, some big numbers there, and have an exit strategy on some of these stocks. But at the moment, momentum seems to be with the companies that are definitely transitioning towards HPC, Bryce.
Yeah, it really does. And you and I probably have a combined a million or plus in the market in miners right now. So maybe worth a few dollars to take a look at our trades if you're looking for that kind of white glove experience. Now, one interesting observation, Michael Saylor put out one of his cryptic tweets over the weekend, this time saying no new orange dots this week. I thought that was interesting because generally he's the largest buyer in the market. This week he was absent from the market, instead highlighting the return on their hodl. But we still managed to push that all-time high. And that really leads into this concept we've talked about of corporate Bitcoin adoption, or DATs. We've seen hundreds and hundreds of companies now getting in this space. I know we look back at this chart in December, looks quite different than how it does today.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing about Michael, he's been consistently buying when Bitcoin is at the top. So it did come as a shock to me today when we had an all-time high and he wasn't buying. But yeah, we've looked at the chart, which has been kindly put together by Hodl 15 Capital. I remember, we put up the previous, one, which was in December 2024. So only literally just over 9 months ago. And you had to have 3 Bitcoin on there to get into the top 70, and now you've got to have effectively 500 to get in the top 70, and you've got to have over 100 just to get on the board. This is significant change. Over 1 million Bitcoin now owned by public companies. Obviously, the majority with strategy, but that's a growing trend. And you can see the green arrows. They're the changes in the last week because he does this on a regular basis. And we know there's a few miners on there as well. So we've got Mara second largest holding there. Not a treasury management company, as they say, but we'll get further into that when we speak to Mara shortly and get one of their team on the podcast to give us an update on what they really are all about. Riot Platforms, actually for the first in a long, long time, sold slightly more than their production this month. They sold 20 more than their production, so you can see a red arrow there, but that's not the trend for them. They've been increasing their hodl literally every month by a small amount for the last few years. CleanSpark also increasing it, going above that 13,000 level. We haven't had a Hut 8's update out there, but they're solidly the next miner with over 10,000 Bitcoin. So the miner's still dominant in this space, but there are far more companies now trying to, and you mentioned these DATs there, trying to use that process, that strategy I've took out there, and Michael Saylor, and trying to deliver a premium to their company by having Bitcoin on the balance sheet. It's worked for some, and it's maybe worked against for some others, and that's the challenge. I mean, Michael Saylor is somebody that the market knows. He's been in the market a long time. Even his company was still worth a considerable amount before they started buying Bitcoin, so he was a known entity, and therefore he had some presence in the market, and so his strategy's been taken as one way, and I think anyone out there just going out there thinking we can just sort of buy Bitcoin and create this thing may need to think again. It's not for everybody, but time will tell as to whether it pays off. But I see some of the DATs now, they're sort of like they're having a less than 1 MNAV, which is what we weren't seeing 3 months ago when there were significant premiums across these companies.
Yeah, we sure have seen the landscape change there. Nice to note, though, 3 of the top 10 hodlers in the world, Bitcoin miners, again, that we cover. So that's really the first component of this perfect storm, is you have insatiable demand for Bitcoin, corporations stacking it on balance sheet, now pushing the price up to new all-time highs, really just supply and demand taking effect here. The other component, or X factor, is the introduction of the ETFs, the regulatory landscape. So we've talked about the Clarity Act, some of these Genius Act, new government initiatives to help frame the crypto regulatory world. This, as a result, has started to open up new optionality for ETFs, for hedge funds, for institutions to adopt Bitcoin. And really, no one has done that better than BlackRock and IBIT. So they are now creeping up on $100 billion worth of ETF value in their IBIT fund, now making this the most profitable ETF that BlackRock has in terms of the fees that they actually collect.
Yeah, this is amazing. And you think about, we're only talking just over a year, not 25 years like some of these ETFs have been around for. 1 year. Assets under management, nearly 100 billion there, 97 billion. And the revenues received from that, if you look at the fact they receive 0.3% fee, $245 million annually. No wonder, they did a 180-degree turnaround to say that Bitcoin was real, because they can certainly make real profits out of this. It's the best performing ETF, and I don't expect that to change for the foreseeable future as they continue to buy more. And I believe I think they're getting close to now 770,000 Bitcoin, which is heading towards about 4% of the whole Bitcoin market. And that's going to continue to increase there. So you have them at that amount there, and Michael Saylor with his amount there. You've got 2 entities there, probably getting close to 7-8% of the whole of Bitcoin that's out there. And that's quite scary to understand that, because 21 million Bitcoin, and you've got 2 entities that have a significant amount of it. So, but the ETFs as a whole have been fantastic for Bitcoin, and hopefully we'll see that continue, and we'll see the fact that as there's less and less people selling, that can only mean one thing.
It certainly can. The race is on to accumulate the most Bitcoin. It appears the UK is getting into that race as well. They don't want to be left out of those ETF or ETP fees in the European market. So they're actually going to be launching some of their own exchange traded products in the UK market. That should bode extremely well. I know you've voiced concern a few times on the podcast, Anthony, saying in your opinion you feel UK is kind of lagging North America in some of the regulatory, some of the investment opportunities. So this is obviously a welcome news story for you.
Yeah, and it is in one sense, but one area they are certainly not lagging behind is the fact that the Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs have contacted all the exchanges and made sure that all the data for UK residents is being sent back to them to show them their effectively their what's in their accounts, what they've bought, what they've sold, so that when you have to put in your tax return, you can turn around and clarify how much profit you've made on selling Bitcoin or any other crypto assets, and they will already know what that figure is. This is the scary thing now. Big Brother knows everything. They can trace everything, and with AI, that only just helps them do it easier. And so, I had to fill a form at the weekend for my exchange, giving them all the details to say how much I was earning, how much I was investing in crypto, etc., etc. All this information is getting passed back to the government in the UK so that they can make sure when I do my return, if I've sold any crypto assets and a taxable gain has occurred and I have to then pay the capital gains tax on that, I'm putting the right information in there because they're checking. So yes, that we think in one way they're a little bit behind the curve, but in terms of tax recovery, they're far from behind the curve. They're leading the way probably.
Gotta love the British and their taxation policy. That's, I guess, known as KYC or Know Your Customer, and that is becoming a lot more common, I think, around the world. Bitcoin started peer-to-peer, decentralized, and it's slowly becoming quite a bit more regulated, but I guess that kind of goes hand in hand with adoption. Now, the next component here, we've talked about corporate buying, we've talked about ETF buying globally. Now we wanted to talk about the AI HPC re-rate. So really, this story broke last year with the CoreWeave Core Scientific announcement. We've been following that closely. We can kick it off there with your parity table and then maybe talk about one of the more recent developments, the comments from Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we look at today's position, it is starting to get a bit closer to the parity in terms of what the deal was agreed on the 7th of July. Remember that $9 billion agreed gave an indicative price for the Core Scientific share of $20.40. Well, the indicative price today is $17.28, but believe you me, it's been a lot less than that over the last few months there, and we've been highlighting that gap. Well, the gap's closing. The indicative value now is 7.62 billion. So that's round about 80% of where it needs to be. So there's a bit more of a push to get towards that $20.40. Today's share price is actually $18.15. So above the 18 mark is probably as high as it's been, as from a high since it came out of Chapter 11. And so I would imagine, maybe there are people out there thinking, well, I'm going to get more by waiting to exchange my shares. Remember, the vote's on the 28th of October, so you've got about 3 weeks left to get your votes in place. I voted last week there. It came through via my trading account, and so it was very easy to do. There was two elements to it. You either vote for the deal, and then you have to vote for the compensation package that we highlighted on a previous podcast for the senior management. It was quite a large amount, but remember, Adam and the team there brought this company out of Chapter 11, so they're getting rewarded for the service that they did there. I mean, this could have gone, a number of ways going into Chapter 11 with all the debts they had, but they've come out there. The company's valued at over 5 billion today, so maybe some of these CEOs deserve a little bit of credibility for doing the work they've done to get it that way and getting shareholders. I know a lot of shareholders who bought post Chapter 11 are sitting on some significant profits. And I know a couple of shareholders out there who recently bought houses based on the profits they earned from selling their shares. No name, no pack drills, but you know who you are. I hope you listen to the podcast. Put in a comment below if you do, and it is you. We'll be interested to see that name pop up.
Yeah, no kidding. Couple of great wins on the core trade there. Now, this is really interesting. I remember last year when this deal came out, everybody in the entire industry, including competitors or other companies, was envious of this deal. Now, the tables, I don't want to say have turned, but they've shifted. We've seen a tremendous amount of CapEx flowing into this space. Mike Alfred rightfully points out the amount of commitment just in the CapEx spend alone should fuel this industry for at least a few years in terms of growth. So this next comment from the HC Wainwright, Ben Gagnon, talks about maybe this late mover advantage and waiting, the fact that every time one of these deals hits the market, there's less available megawatts for future deals. This kind of dovetails nice into a big announcement we got this morning as well. So we'll listen to the clip from Ben, a little bit of a unique perspective, then we can analyze that.
So what's going to happen here is that you don't actually want to lock yourself into a term sheet with a hyperscaler today. What you want to do is you want to execute. You want to bring that closer and closer and closer to the point where the customers are getting increasingly more desperate and they're willing to pay increasingly higher prices. That's how you lock in higher margins and higher revenues. And so this is exactly aligned with how we view the market.
So as you can see there, Ben's got a little bit of a unique outlook. Now, we've heard Cipher CEO Tyler Page, we've heard Daniel Roberts from IREN echo or similar kind of outlook on this waiting and see game. That being said, this morning, AMD, a massive announcement with OpenAI, $14 billion investment and up to 10% stake in the company. So we can talk about the impact of this on the miners, but from my perspective, it appears Ben Gagnon and some of these others that are maybe later to the table do have a lot of optimism to look for.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way. And if you remember what Dan Roberts said, not the last podcast, but the podcast before that, when he said how much current power was being put towards HPC in North America, and I think he mentioned about 4 gigawatts, and what the expectation or the requirement was in the years to come, well over 30 gigawatts. So there's an insatiable requirement to get power. And we know some of the miners already have these deals out there. But again, we're now starting to see more and more deals come out, and this one's a big one for AMD.
Yeah, up to 6 gigawatts of compute. The other interesting angle I wanted to ask you about, this is the first partnership we've seen at this type of level with AMD as opposed to NVIDIA. So these are kind of competing chips. We've talked about AMD really being known for that edge inference compute. We also saw IREN just purchased their first order of AMD chips on their most recent monthly announcement. Now we're waiting for their September production report or update, so we'll see if anything's changed. But this was interesting to me, Anthony, the fact that they had just started to integrate AMD into their lineup, and now we see this type of announcement.
Yeah, they bought a string of NVIDIA machines, but they bought 1,100 AMD M1350 XS machines there. So they're obviously done a lot of testing of these, and they're trying them out at their Prince George site in Canada. And this is just a way of keeping options open. Remember, even from the Bitcoin mining day, Bitcoin controlled most of the market, but they didn't have the whole market. And the likes of Riot passed on Bitmain and went to MicroBT. There's opportunity there for other chip makers to come into the market. It's not all about NVIDIA. And so this might just be the start of seeing some of these other providers coming to the fold. I think the market's big enough for everybody out there.
I do too. And for anyone holding AMD, a significant jump today, a $250 plus billion company that was up 37% in pre-market. You really don't see that very often in a trading career. So congratulations to anyone holding AMD. And it is going to be interesting to see this race really play out between these two heavyweight chip makers. Now, speaking of opportunity, our good friend John Belizaire, he's been on the channel a number of times. We've covered the extensive news flow from Soluna this year. Really a breath of fresh air this morning as they've now got the SEC compliance department off their back, so to speak, regaining regulatory compliance for the dollar share minimum.
Yes, and they've done that very, very quickly. So you have to have, I think it's about 10 days, consecutive business days where your share price has to go over $1. They've done that with very swift achievement. It was achieved on October the 2nd. And as a result of that, the Nasdaq have now closed the matter itself. So let's hope that, the share price continues to keep that momentum up there. It's in a nice position at the moment. Remember, they've also just agreed to increase the amount of authorized shares from $75 million to $375 million. So that's an increase of 300 million of authorized shares. And, to those retail investors out there who have Soluna are questioning the fact this will mean further dilution, I'll just say, two things to you. IREN and CleanSpark, they both used their dilution to great effect. I'm not saying it works for everybody, but if you don't have the levers to use to create that capital raise to help you with the projects, and you can see from the slide on the screen now about the number of projects Soluna have got in place there, and the majority, all around Bitcoin hosting or AI. And, with this AI incessant requirement for power, most of those subsequent projects could be all going to AI itself there. They're going to have to raise capital. Yes, they've grown significantly from their size. We were covering, a few months ago, and it was like, we were looking at the market cap. It was $8 to $9 million. And last week I think it had gone over $100 million. It's dropped a bit since then, but still over $50 million today. Now $50 million. You go to the banks and try and raise capital. It's a challenge. If IREN goes to the bank and raise capital $15.5 billion, it's a lot easier to do that. So the way this company can do that is to when the market share price is reasonably high, they can maybe sell some extra shares in the market, get that capital, help get some of these other projects shovel ready, get them start processing, get some of that funding to maybe reduce the amount they have to share with a potential partner. Because a lot of their projects, they have to get the funding in place, and then the funder tends to get all their money repaid back in a very short space time before the real project share starts after that point in time there. Well, if you've got funding available to put on the table as well as another funder to deliver a project, it means that you might be able to get your share back that much quicker. And bear in mind, when it's paid back quicker, Soluna do take the majority of the actual revenues coming through then, because they also get a 50% share in profit, but they also get, because it's them actually working on the transaction, they get all the fees for actually delivering the project at the same time. So that can be heading towards 70% of future project share once everything's been paid off.
You're certainly right. Yeah, we've looked at those pre and post flip slides. The other factor here that's really working in favor of Soluna and all of these miners is the reduction in interest rates, or the fiscal easing we're seeing. We've watched M2 supply just explode. So we've got corporate buying of Bitcoin, we've got institutional or ETF buying, we've got the HPC AI re-rate, we've got interest rates on the decline, a very positive US administration in terms of Bitcoin policy and how they want that integrated into the economy. We're seeing that really in full circle here in Hive. So they've been expanding their hash rate aggressively, trying to take advantage of the Bitcoin price increase. They've also been expanding their HPC through their subsidiary Buzz HPC. We've talked about that data center here in Canada. So this is a great example of a miner that's really taking advantage of a lot of these different opportunities right now.
Yeah, this has been a stellar story for this year for Hive Digital. They've started the year of just over 6 exahash in terms of their energized hash rate. Well, for September, they've announced they've gone to 21.7 exahash. That's amazing. I mean, that's a significant increase there. I don't think any miners had that percentage increase. Bitdeer will be not far behind that, or even close to it. But the rest of the miners this year have been more focused towards driving their HPC strategies. But Hive, they came out with what I would say was an ambitious target. I mean, when you're at 6 exahash, remember we had these same conversations when IREN was at 10 exahash and they had this 20 exahash target, and they said, we're not going to go for 20, we're going to increase it to 30. And we were saying, actually, we were thinking you're going to struggle getting to 20 exahash. Well, we probably had those same conversations earlier about Hive, but you know what? They've hit every target getting there, and they've done it in advance of the target date. And so now we've literally, just over 6 weeks left. They've got to grow another 3 and a little bit exahash. That will be achieved without any doubt whatsoever. My only question now to Hive Digital is what's the next target? Because it looks like 25 is going to be achieved as and when with Thanksgiving. Is there a bigger target after that? Or is the focus then on high performance compute? Now, in terms of their monthly production, 267 Bitcoin, that's an increase of 8%. Now, bear in mind, we had a day less mining as well, and we've had difficulty. So they've increased Bitcoin mining because of that increased hash rate. And the total operational hash rate energized went from 18.1 to 21.7. That's an increase of 20%. So a big tick in the box there for Hive. Average operational hash rate, so this is how much they're able to achieve during the month. Bear in mind, a lot of these miners have had to curtail when the time is there. And also, when you go from 18.1 to 21.7, you don't plug them all in on day one. It's going to take, a number of time to put in 3 exahash of miners over a period. So that will have been during the month there, but they still managed to get a 19% increase in their operational hash rate. So they were working really well. Must have a great team down there in Paraguay doing this. In terms of operational power, that's I've had information today around about 450 megawatts now. So again, increase from the previous period there where it saw 440. Efficiency's improved as well. It's 18 joules a terahash. Only IREN and CleanSpark have a more efficient fleet at the moment. So again, having that efficiency, having a lower power rate in Paraguay, around about the 4 to 4.5 cents rate there. Those two metrics mean that they're going to be producing significant margins compared to peer miners in North America for the majority of their Bitcoin. And we know they've had some favorable news from Scandinavia. So in Sweden, where they've been reducing the tax rates on power costs, that means a bit more margin there as well. So that's been great news for Hive. Now, if you look at the HODL, we haven't put the HODL on the table here. The last time Hive actually listed their HODL was in their Q1 earnings, which was for the period ending June 2025. That HODL there is 435 Bitcoin. That is also shown on the HODL 15 capital table that we showed previously. So that's the last time they put an update. But just to give you some context of that, I mean, remember 6 months ago, Hive, when they were announcing their HODL month by month, they had over 2,000 Bitcoin. And people are going to say, well, what have they done with that? Well, I can tell you what they've done with it. They've used some of that Bitcoin there to grow from 6 exahash to 21 exahash. Now, what they've done, they've been very clever. They've gone to Bitmain. They've made these orders for the latest machines. So they're getting those S21 machines down in Paraguay. And what they said to Bitmain is, we'll give you the Bitcoin as a pledge to buy those machines. Now, we want the opportunity to replace that Bitcoin with cash in the future. And they agreed a rate there. I think it's either 86,000 per coin or 88,000 per coin. So if you look at today's price of 125,000 per Bitcoin, if Hive were to go to the bank tomorrow and raise billions of dollars and say, look, we need this as a short-term loan, we're going to buy our Bitcoin back and we can sell it. And then, they would make over $40,000 per Bitcoin that they've used as collateral, as that pledge for those mining machines. So I think, all intents and purposes, they'll be using every opportunity they have to raise that money to get that Bitcoin back on the balance sheet. And even as a worst case scenario, they get the Bitcoin to sell it to repay any debt. That's on a short-term basis. That gives the company profitability. Remember, we've talked about IREN. IREN don't have any Bitcoin HODL. They're valued at $15.5 billion today. So there's no premium for companies having HODL there. IREN have been given a premium because they've grown hash rate, they've sold their Bitcoin, and that's helped them to raise hash rate. So they haven't had to dilute as much as other mining companies, and they've been given the premium for that factor as well. And yes, they are moving into HPC, but there's no big deal at the moment for HPC. Maybe when they announce a big deal, that share price goes even higher. So, when we look at companies saying there used to be this thing a couple of years ago where, if we hodl everything, it's going to be great for us and we're going to have a premium. Well, IREN have shown how that doesn't work out. They're valued today at the same price as the next two biggest miners, Mara and Riot Platforms. So people out there need to understand, it's not going to give you the greatest amount there. If you're using your Bitcoin to grow your company, I think the market quite likes that as an attractive option to just diluting everything all the time.
I certainly agree, and you can directly see that in the numbers. It will be interesting to see how these market caps and market cap as a percentage of HODL change now that we see Bitcoin starting to really rally. But you bring up some great points there. So we'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. We feel like this is really the culmination of all of these different macro trends and catalysts that we've been looking for coming together at the exact same time, Q4 of 2025. We've got the institutional buying, the corporate buying, we've got the HPC AI re-rate, and then of course the interest rate or macro environment as well, along with those regulatory tailwinds. So let us know how you guys are feeling. You mentioned the word target there as it relates to Hive. Make sure you guys have some price targets or sell targets in mind. It's easy to get caught up in the euphoria. Make sure you're booking some profits along the way. We all have those horror stories from past bull runs where we should have, could have, would have, and didn't. So again, if you're looking for some support or maybe additional guidance, feel free to sign up for the members only channel or video. With that being said, a great start to the week, an excellent start for Bitcoin and the miners. We'll see you back here tomorrow.